I wonder if there's something for us to talk about when it comes to partners and men. I mean, I'm really passionate about that area.
I think there's so much to unpack there, and it's always something I'm really conscious of. I think as a midwife means with woman. Like, it's very clear in my job description who my person is, and whoever she chooses to have around her as her people, like that's sort of the dynamic, kind of how I step into it. Like, well, she's the person I'm with, and then whoever she wants, if they have value for her, then they have value for me. Whereas I feel like the way that we speak about your work is a little different.
Yeah.
So maybe you can get us started on your way.
Yeah, okay, fair. So I think it's a given that the woman is the one growing the baby and giving birth and all the things and breastfeeding. So it's all, the focus has always primarily been and is on the woman. But if the woman has a partner, then to me as a doula, that partner's involvement, what it looks like, how the partner is doing, what's the stress levels of the partner, what's the partner's understanding of the role that they play, their education process of birth and of the postpartum is super relevant to me. I know it is to you too, but to me, I feel like I have the job of educating the partner as well. I feel like it is under my responsibility or my umbrella to really invite partners in to understand what the woman is going to go through, so that it can be normalized, but also so that they can process it within themselves, because men process things differently, and deal with knowledge in a different way. Different hormones is at play. And what I have noticed is, because sometimes I will support couples where they have straight up told me that I'll be there for the woman. The partner is not very interested in being part of the meetings. And they've kind of been upfront about it, and I have to honor and respect that that's how they're going to do it. But then when I compare those types of relationships or births or the journey that I join them in, compared to the ones where the partners are with me or with us for every single meeting, there's a very difference in the synergy and in the relationship connection. And I'm not here to say how a relationship should be or how connected or not someone should be. That's really none of my business. But I do consider it my job to really offer that to the partners. And lately, in the last maybe year and a half or so, I have spent a significant more time researching men's health, and particularly in the postpartum realm, which has changed. And so I spend time when I feel like I can connect with the partners and I can see that there's an interest. I very quickly, I think actually in the first prenatal meeting I'm with them, I draw them into understanding the birth process by also explaining what happens on a hormonal level for partners that are in the room. And that has worked really well, and really, like, something clicks in their brain. I think men are really good at, getting graspable knowledge and like putting it somewhere and then pondering on it within themselves in a different way that women do. And that means that when I see them again and again, they might have different questions than they would have if I had which is what I used to, just talk about birth from a physiological place and what's happening for the woman. So that's kind of how I'm doing it at this stage.
And what would you say, okay, it's a made up kind of number, but like, out of all the people that you meet, so what would be the most common questions or concerns or desires, when it comes to the partner, like what they want in terms of from you?
I think first off, I think it changes dramatically in the process.
Yeah.
I think first off, there is like, can we hire you and be reassured that my partner will be well? I think that's the undertone of what they're probably asking me. That does hiring a doula mean that you will take care of her? Because they are aware that they don't really understand the process. Some will be more like, deeper in that process, meaning like really wondering like what's going to happen to her, or maybe they've seen like friends or their sister or something where they've had more of an experience where the woman have had a postpartum experience that was hard, let's say, and they are aware that I need someone to be there for her because I can't do that. And I love that. I love that honesty. But it's very much about, can you reassure me that you can look after my partner, and can you tell me what to do? I feel like there's a really clear understanding that men have, that there is this like, I don't bloody know what's going to go on. And then there's this varying degrees of like how much ownership they take of their role in it, or whether they kind of remove themselves and hope that I will just do it for them, which I won't. And I talk to them about that, you know, and sometimes in the meet and greet that we have, you know, very quickly I hope to make them understand that I'm there for the couple. I'm not just there for the woman. She takes a lot of the time, of course, but it's really, I am actually hoping that by me supporting them, that they become a stronger, they have a greater synergy after birth, and they come closer together. I know that that's way beyond my job prescription, but it's my true passion. Is that, can I leave that couple after I have been with them through pregnancy and birth and the postpartum? Can I leave them in a stronger, more resilient place than I did when I met them? Yeah, so I want them to I want them to have had a conversation where they explore more of the things that we may not think that we need to talk about before they have the baby in their arms. And that involves, like, you know, are there religious stuff that we haven't talked about? Are there traditions that we haven't explored? Like, what traditions are we gonna harness in our relationship going forward as a family? It could be what schooling, all that, like those types. But also deeper ones, like what are the things that worked for you when you were a child? Like, what are your memories of your child being raised or in your childhood? Like, what are the things that feel really traumatic maybe, and what are the things that you need to navigate together? But we need to put words to it. We have to have a consciousness in it, because as we know, so much of parenting becomes unconscious because it's so intense and it's so all the time. So I try and involve the couple in this conversation where I'm not part of it. I always offer for them to have the conversation and go through the list of questions and suggestions together without me there. And then if they need further support, then, or more like, I don't know, guidance, because I'm obviously not a counselor or a therapist, but I've been in the space for so long and I understand so much of the parenting challenges that I'm happy to brainstorm with them as well. And that has worked really well in the last few years when I've done that, because almost always there are areas where they haven't thought about talking about these things before the baby is there. And I also talk about ways, you know, the differences that we have as a masculine and feminine in how we communicate and how we meet each other's needs. And so I talk to them about that, and often in a really fun way, like, you know, because it doesn't have to be heavy, but it has to be explored. So that's how I try and honor the men in it too, because they have such a vital role and they don't understand it. They're not aware of how wildly profound they can change the experience for their child and their partner, and also for themselves. And there's a lot of science there. So anyways, I'm really loving talking to men about this, and I can see a difference for sure.
It's amazing. I think I can hear and from where a lot of what you're saying and how you're working overlaps with the work that I do, but how it is quite vastly different.
Okay.
So I would say that the most common, you know how there's things that you just find yourself saying again and again because they're good, probably,
Yeah,
and
they have to be
so,
said.
and they're relevant to so many different people. So I think the way that I've been approaching the beginning of this conversation about, you know, the change that's coming, there's a few key things that I find I always discuss. One is a wisdom from our teacher, Jane Hardwick Collins, and she talks about the mama toto, so the mum and the baby being in the middle. So I go a step further. Where I'm not sure if she said this or if it's something I've made up. So yeah, it could be her. But I'll often tell mums, like, baby's in the middle, and as a midwife, I don't ever worry about your baby. I really don't, because you've got your baby. You've got your baby in you, or when baby's born, you've got your baby on you, and you're going to love and care for your baby more than anyone. So you're going to let me know. Yeah. But generally speaking, baby's in the middle, mum's just on the outside. So Jane calls it concentric circles. And if you imagine that, they're in the middle, and then usually there's the partner just around. I might be around there too. There might be a doula. And then you have, your friends and family and your wider community. And there's another, I can't remember who to attribute it to, but there's another person who talks about this concentric circles theory. And the idea is all the support goes in and all the complaints and the rubbish go out. And I established that very early, if we can have that conversation, and say to partners, this is what's really important, is to know that, all of her needs are going to be flowing out to you. She's going to be taking care of the baby. The baby's going to be throwing all its needs on the mother, mostly, certainly in the beginning. And then she's going to kind of be going outward to those circles and getting her needs met. But just as much as it's important to understand, and I'm talking very much about the early postpartum, right? Usually, that I expect there to be frustrations and stresses for partners, but that doesn't go in. Those stresses and frustrations can't go in the beginning. But equally important, they have to have somewhere to go. And I think we have these I think it's changing from the partners and the male partners I've been looking after with their women in the last 10 years or so. I think this new generation, they've got it a little bit more. But certainly there used to be this real stoic idea that like men had to have it all figured out, which is bullshit. It's just not reasonable. And the best and healthiest ways I see this flow, from what I see, just from my experiences, is when there is that really strong support network outside. I think I can't remember when we were talking about it in our last chats. It was like we thought the ratio of like one baby to 5 adults. Yeah. So, this is where that wider community comes into play. Knowing that knowing there's someone there to catch you. And it just, for me, it feels like a really safe way to protect the baby, the woman, that family unit, and give clear kind of guidelines about, well, what is normal in those early days. Like, it's really not normal within the first week of birth for a partner to be complaining to their partner who's just given birth about how tired they are. No. Like, I would really think twice about doing that. But it is also really important to honor that person probably is exhausted. You've gone through the labor, the birth, and the first week of learning how to look after a tiny infant and how to recover, and the fact that you're now a parent. So that has to go somewhere. Yeah. And I think if it hasn't gone somewhere to go, I could see how that would build a great deal of frustration. And, a lot of that early relationship dynamic stuff that maybe gets brushed under the carpet, but definitely comes back at some point. Making sure that everyone in that space to transition feels held and heard. But how do we do that and protect and honor everyone's needs? That for me has been kind of a working theory, and I've chatted about it with a lot of families, and it seems to be something that a lot of people resonate with. A lot of people feel like, yep, that makes sense, and I could work on that. But like you're saying, it's something you need to start talking about in the beginning of your pregnancy, because you need to build that community by the time you have your baby to have somewhere to go. I think there's a lot of caricatures and tropes about men that are just untrue and unfair. I don't know if I'm living in a skewed sample, but the men around me tend to be really, really, really engaged and actually really wanting to do the best, whatever that is. But sometimes just not knowing what that is, because I expect a lot of them haven't been at a birth before they've had a baby, and even if they had, most of the time they're doctors or anaesthetists, which are the doctors, but I'm saying obstetrician or anaesthetist. So their role in being there when a baby was born was very different to when you're supporting someone to have your own baby.
It's such a good point, because this generation of men, they don't have much of a reference point for this modern man that we have now. The roles have changed so much, and they're continuing to change, for better and for worse. But I think it is a really challenging area for men now, because we are asking a lot of them, and we're also ridiculing them for a lot of things as well. You know, they're not able to feel the things, and they can't communicate the way that women communicate. You know, there's so many things which are true, but it's also just we're different, and that we need to just get with the program and realize that we have different physiologies, and therefore we need to talk about this in different ways so everyone is included. But I agree with you. I see very engaged partners or men and fathers. Like, I see that they really want to, but they don't have a reference point. They can't look backwards and be like, what did my dad do? And what did my granddad do? Because they weren't there. They weren't present in the birth room, probably. Or it was certainly a time where things weren't talked about to the extent that we talk about things now, feelings and physiology and things, you know, it wasn't talked about back then. So they are in an interesting spot, which also really is a gift, because it really leads a way for a new generation, a new way to be a father, and a new way to really honor that profound role in life too, that rite of passage. And that is also part of what I talk to them about, is like, you know, your relationship with your father and your grandfather, like what have been talked about on that side of things. And I know a lot less about the masculine side of it, but you know, it's a conversation we can have, and it invites them to ponder a little bit on it, and be like, oh well, yeah, they weren't really present, or no one really talked about anything, and it allows them to start anew, which I think is really great. And I think maybe because you do home births, I wonder, maybe you can compare also to the past where you weren't a private midwife, when you were working in the hospital, if there's a difference in the dynamic in relationships. Because I find all the home birth couples that I support, they're very like, that's a team engagement journey, whereas meaning they're in it together. Whereas sometimes I would say when it's a hospital or private hospital birth, there might be a slightly different dynamic, without saying too much.
So first, I also do support women to birth in the hospital as well, even now. So that, like, I'm still there, I'm still seeing it. I would say the big fundamental difference is when you're planning to birth in your home, you know, usually it's a conversation where I guess there's a certain amount of support for that being normalized, because it's also his home, and you know, there's a certain amount that's just like a certain amount that we're willing to be present for, right? So but people are still people, right? I think the big difference between home and hospital actually is that at a home birth, you're allowed to just do the normal things. I actually find hospital birth to be so contrived for the partners, because we've gone from this, like, I don't know when it was, 70s or something, just before that, when men weren't allowed anywhere near the birth space. And now suddenly they're expected, like, you have to be in the birth space and you have to be helpful. And as much as, you know, like, it's so amazing that we have come that far, and it's really important that, you know, men are welcome to be there, or partners are meant to be there. But it's so much pressure on them too. Like, I also do think it's okay and really reasonable for a lot of partners to not be the hands-on support for their partner while she's giving birth. It doesn't mean that he hasn't got a really important role to play. It's just that his role doesn't have to be as her midwife or as her doula or as her, you know, birthing, you know, massive support. It's a massive life-changing experience for him. So he's going to go through I don't know, I haven't had a lived experience of being a man becoming a partner, right? So I'm just going off the conversations I've had with my own husband and other men that I've got to know. But, you know, he's allowed to freak out and have a moment as well. He just can't vomit it on her. Like, that's just not the space for it. And when you're in a tiny little room in the hospital and you can't go anywhere, I just think that is so intense, actually, because birth is, look, let's face it, it's repetitive, it's boring, you can't fix it, it just keeps on going on, and you just have to sit and watch it. Like, that actually just feels crazy to me. Whereas when you're at home, like, you just live your life. You know, partners are out there, like, making some food, heating up the water, rubbing a back, being present, and then sort of going away. And I would say as well that the women who are birthing at home, possibly, I mean, this is such a generalization, but possibly have an expectation that their life will just continue. They'll labor, they'll have some contractions, they'll start and stop, you know, until like that labor is really active, they're also not just stopping and paying attention to every single contraction. Sorry, I feel like I've got a spider biting me, but anyway, spiders and snakes and all things something. 1 second, sorry.
Oh no, oh God.
I heard it was up my pants, but I think it's gone. All right, I'll let you know.
If I see you swell up and slide off your chair,
Yeah, well,
then
at least I'm being at least I'm being filmed so that you can call the ambulance.
this was the evidence.
That was something. But yeah, so I think that's a big difference. And I think, yeah, it's so hard to hold this space because I think that I guess that's maybe my midwifery perspective, how I view it. Like, if she wants in there, or that's the right thing to do. But from where I sit, it's not so much about what he should be doing or how it should be flowing, or and I've just seen birth look so different for so many people. I think it's really unfair, the pressure that's put on partners to be everything. I actually think it's so. I guess in my early years of midwifery, what I saw a lot in hospital settings was the majority of partners probably shut down from feeling so out of their depth. Sit there in the corner on the phone. That's definitely not what I'm seeing as much, even in the hospitals anymore. There's a lot of, I mean, it could be anyone being there, to be fair, but a lot of the person saying the wrong thing and then not trying again. I remember in the early years of midwifery, we would talk about like, it just seems very simplistic now, but like how to get the partners involved. And it's like, well, you give them that was sort of the rhetoric. Well, you give them a job, you know, men like a job, which I think is a bit simplistic and unfair. But if I was walking into a foreign environment and you know that feeling when you start a new job or you go to a new place and like you're bumping into the furniture because like everything is so uncomfortable and foreign and you don't really know where you're meant to be. I would only imagine that would be the experience of being someone who's never been around birth, going into the hospital with someone having a baby. And there's so much going on around the woman in the room. I'd say the biggest thing I learned to do very early on as a student midwife was, as more staff come in the room, what tends to happen is the partner will step back.
Yes.
Right? Because like something's happening and I'm only going to get in the way, or I don't know what to do. And even now partners will say, oh, am I in your way? And I'm like, oh, whatever. But it's good to have that conversation. And I try to start up front with like, you're not in my way. I'm really pushy. I'll ask you to move. You know, like let's just start there, that you just go where you need to go. And if I feel like I need to jump in somewhere, I'm going to tell you. So like that dynamic, hopefully we can already start to shift from the beginning. Like, this is your way and I'll do what I need to do to keep things safe. So don't even think about me. So yeah, I remember early on learning or being taught from other midwives, you know, and it's true, like how important it is in these moments to come to bring the partners back in, to explain to them, even just to explain what's happening, who's in the room. That was something I did as a student midwife, because I was a student midwife. I couldn't do, I mean, not that student midwives can't do much, but I just remember in those really high stress situations feeling like, I don't know what the fuck I'm meant to do either. Like, this is not, I need a grown up. But I could stand with the woman, or I could stand with the partner, and I could explain what was happening, and I could say, no, you're fine to stand here, or give them a place to be that was closer. But actually on reflection, that just feels like such a weak way to support men in birth.
Simplistic.
Yeah, like, yeah. I mean, I would love to hear from men more in this space. Like I do, I just think I can only talk about my experience as being a midwife, supporting women whose partners are around, right? So I really don't know what they're thinking, because I've never done that before. I'm interested. I wish, we were just talking about this earlier, but really want the men to get together.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
they need to get talking.
Yeah, like I'm happy to like turn up a bunch and like get things rolling, but like I cannot, it's so interesting for me being in a space where I usually feel like, well, I can talk about birth and femininity and women and women's experiences and cycles and seasons. But then I'm like, men, oh, I don't know. Like, but I'm happy to rock up and start the conversation. I just have no lived experience of it. So
Yeah, they meet together and they have a different way of communicating, I'm guessing.
I don't know. What do
And
the men do? I don't know.
yeah, well, yeah, they probably, I don't know. But I agree. I think that's what we talked about before, was just it probably would help them so much. I think what we were talking about was, if a couple refers, if they refer, say, oh, you should really hire Anna-Maria for your birth, she was such a help. But when the referral comes from the man to his buddy, saying, mate, like Anna-Maria was really helpful for whatever reasons that he has, I can tell those men are so much on board because they've had this communication from their buddy, and that is a different way of talking about it. And like you said, it would be great to hear from the men. What is it? What made the difference? So how did you feel supported and how did it work? I do ask, but and I often find that they have so much to share postnatally. Men have a lot to say, and often their realization of the support they had from me happens then, like, oh, right, it was when you showed up, and which you also said is for you too, like when you arrived, then I could relax, because yeah, I don't have to do it all, but they put it all on themselves until they are supported by either the midwife or the doula, whatever else is coming. And that's true, and it's unreasonable, it's too much, because like you said, they're also having an experience, and they need to have room to feel what they need to feel, because they're going from man to father, or whatever that transition is. And it's a really important one, and they need to be given the space to experience what they need to experience, so that they can be the whole version of them on the other side. And yeah, and I feel like the men will say that to me, that gosh, it wasn't until you arrived, or it wasn't until the birth has happened, or it's not until the days after birth that all the things we talked about clicked into place. Until then, it's just really abstract, understandably. But they are probably also the first in their friendship circle, in their family lineage, that understand birth from a different perspective, from a deeper perspective. It's not just like, oh, the woman will go in and make these sounds and then she'll come out and there'll be a baby.
Yeah.
There's this whole process that they're involved in, and it's a really wild process. But yeah, I think there is room to have much more conversation with men and men amongst men, because that pivotal role that a man holds within a family dynamic is it's a strong one. They can be the rock. They can be that gatekeeper and that protector. That's a really cool role, and it really has such massive effects on the woman, on how she can lean into her experience and how she's there for her little newborn baby. And that's a beautiful synergy when you look at those circles, and yeah, I feel like men can really get it when you take them on the journey.
Yeah. I think also, just when you were saying that, I was thinking about, when I was mostly doing hospital births, what was my, what were the things that what were the things that I said a lot? And I do remember, and I stand by it. Good advice. Is for anyone, for any partner who's being with a woman, but I think particularly if it's a male partner, because this is the society we live in. If you're birthing in a hospital, right? What do we know women need? We know women need to feel safe, loved, unobserved. Yeah, she needs to feel like she completely can let go. But we also know that in hospitals, the door can open at any time, right? The classic knock, knock, enter, like no one waits, no one. And there's this weird kind of like, it's her room, but it's actually the hospital's room, and it's private, but it's also open. And she's being potentially monitored with all of her information up on a big board outside the room. I don't know if women are aware of that during their labor, anyone who is staff working in that room where all the machines are. There's usually big whiteboards and the baby's heart rate's being monitored, and there's general information. So it's very exposing. And sometimes just knowing that literally no one is going to come in that room without your permission is the thing that she needs to feel completely safe. That is such an excellent space for a partner to walk into, because a simple fact is, if they stand at the door, right, and anyone who knocks or tries to come in, they say, just a moment, I'm just going to check, right? And you're not saying no, you're not saying no one can come in. All you're saying is there is not one person that's going to walk into that room. And I just say, also me as a midwife, like I'm also external. So stop me, check with her and say, are you okay for this person to come in? She will most likely say yes. And then they come in, and that means that she can go to the shower, she can sit on the toilet, she can be in one of those intimate places with her clothes off and not feel like someone's just going to come in and look at me every 2 seconds. And it feels really simple, but actually it's incredibly life-changing, and it makes a huge difference to the impact. Like it makes a huge impact to the woman's experience of feeling safe and unobserved. And I can only imagine that as a woman birthing, knowing that my partner's got me, no one's going to get past them. I'm just going to let go. Like that I think is power. And he doesn't have to be the one who knows the right moves, right? Like how many times you've been at a birth and you've been doing some kind of particular squeeze or touch or something, and then you show the partner and the partner does it, and then the woman's like, do it like Jen does it, or do it like Anna, and that's okay, because we've done this a lot, and so it's okay for us to have those set of skills and be good at them. But what we can't do is step into the place that her partner can, and yeah, I just think that would be such a great, that'd be hot. That'd be a great experience, giving birth, knowing like, he's got me.
Absolutely. And that's what fuels that deeper renewal in their relationship. And that can then be built on. If she felt exactly that, like so held and supported but like protected from her partner, I think there's a very primal element there that's speaking that need. And men are really good at that. They really can hold that space well. I've seen men like really take control of the room, really take control of the conversation, and the woman just goes, oh, buttery soft. She just knows that he can have those conversations. She doesn't need to be, in her head or worry about anyone because he's got this. Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
And it's so funny because it's so easy to do. And it's not being, you're not blocking, you're not being aggressive. It's just there is a presence that a man has with his body, just standing still, calmly, gently smiling, saying, hey, I'm just going to check with her.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've not worked in a space where that wouldn't be respected. It's a pretty simple thing to do. And if it was me and I was laboring on the toilet and I had my boobs out and everything was leaky, and I'd want a second. I would want just a second before I was ready to talk to, and you know how it is in hospitals as well. It's usually like a little entourage of people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the last thing that you need when you're laboring. I'm talking about a lot of the kind of routine stuff as well. Even as a midwife, what a lot of, people don't realize is even if you work as a private midwife in the hospital setting, you're working in a hospital. It is different to a home birth. There is a team outside. I'm keeping them updated. I'm letting people know. I'm getting equipment. So I'm coming and going in the room a lot. Whereas at home, I have everything with me, right? And when I'm ready for the team, I call the second midwife to come. So the energy is just fundamentally a little bit different. And so if I'm coming and going in the room as I need to, right, that's also disruptive. That's also kind of opening that external world up for the woman again and again. So if a partner wants to step into that space, and pop off king, like get it. Like I'm happy for him to I'll just
do it.
Yeah, that feels good to me too, because I know she's safe. If I can't be the one next to her all the whole time, which is not possible.
No, it's not possible from that perspective. There is just a unspoken, like subtle energy that when you enter a hospital, there is a patient-doctor energy. And I always talk about this, like you're having a baby, you're not a patient. You're not going in because you're sick. But I think even when we talk about it, the energy there is just different. You can certainly create that space. You can do like all the things we're talking about, and much, much more can be done to really own that room as much as possible and really put your own imprint on it. Which I see time and time again. You know, midwives will come in and doctors will come in and be like, oh, this room is so lovely. And it changes the energy. But that's something we have to actually create, because otherwise it is a hospital and it is clinical, and it feels like you walk in there and you immediately feel like you're no longer an expert of your own body. And that's no one's necessarily intention, but it's just, I think it's important to be aware of, and for the partners to really quickly take ownership of that room and his partner and his role in it. It really makes a difference. It's such a beautiful thing to see. And then they don't feel so insecure, and then it's easier for them to step in and give her a kiss and a cuddle, because he's now in his power. He's not like on the sideline, like thinking, is this normal? And like, I know nothing. And am I doing the wrong thing? And, you know, you can shift that energy by, by all the things we've said. It's very sweet when that happens, and so important. So
And
important.
I think if, you know, if we look at birds, you know, who go out and create the nests for their lady birds to make their eggs in, you know, when you're talking about creating that environment, it's actually constant work too. Like, you don't just go in. I mean, there's time, like which songs and which music. There is a point in labor where she's not going to want to tell you, right? Usually, if you're in hospital, hopefully she's at that point, right? That we're hoping that she's really in the depths of labor. So you're going to have to just put the music on. She might hate that song. Then you're going to have to change it again. Someone's going to walk in the room and turn the lights on. So when they go, you're going to have to turn the lights down, put the fairy lights back on. You know, there's a lot of adjusting, a lot of nest building. It's a constant, that it is a constant activity to be like, well, this is the energy. If you've worked in hospitality, you'll be great at it. That's how
Yeah,
because
that's true.
in my old life, I was a bartender, so I'm all about the ambiance, right? I can set up environments people like make out in. It's definitely the same environment people have baby in. And you know, the other thing that I find really powerful too is, you know, when there's those kind of stressful situations or things that are uncertain, even if it's not an emergency, you can just, there's an energy, a thrum that's building. Women can sometimes get a little bit quiet in their words, which is understanding because they're having an adrenaline surge. As a partner, I know you would do it as a doula. I know I do it as a midwife, where I try to as much as I can. But certainly as a partner, what you can do very easily is just say, just a minute, do you have anything to say? Just a minute, do you have anything to ask? Or if she says something, say, she said this. And they're really, really simple things. And you're not taking power away from your partner. You're actually making sure that she is getting as much power back as she can, and she's being heard and her words are being heard. And it doesn't mean the outcome is necessarily different, but it definitely means that there's a person in that space who's completely focused on her. And we know that in situations where labor's going off on a tangent and there might be extra interventions needed, the concern very quickly goes to the monitor and the baby. And as a
So
partner,
quickly.
the best, easiest thing for you to do is just to be with her and repeat her words and give her space to respond. Because I, having been on the other side of it, I know that there can be hectic situations, and I'm thinking about 10 different clinical things, and I'm sure that there's a doctor in the room, they're thinking the same thing. We can unfortunately forget about the whole woman that's in front of us, you know,
Yeah.
and that's not acceptable.
Mm.
But that's your woman, you know, so you can bring all that attention back to her.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
I've
not
seen
lose track of it.
a lot of partners do it so well. Men who I wouldn't call them aggressive people. I wouldn't even call them the most assertive of people, but there is just a gentleness in, can you say that again? Can you say that louder? I didn't understand. You know, do you mind if I turn the lights back off? Like, not that you have to ask permission, but there's such a gentleness in how it's done. And I do watch, you're right, I do watch those relationships and go, oh, he's got her. Like,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. And we say it too, like sometimes when we debrief together, and, you know, um, there's a feeling where you're like, oh man, he really got the opportunity and he took it, and he saw her and he held her and she leaned into him in such a beautiful way. Some of my favorite moments is when, like, I might have done some counter pressure for hours or something that has worked for her, and then for some reason we swap over and it becomes the man, and initially it's not working, like you said, like, oh, do it like Anna-Maria did it, or it's not hard enough, it's too hard, or whatever. And then when I don't take over right away for whatever reason, maybe I'm doing something else, he then finds his own way, and then suddenly she only wants him. And then it's like they're a unit. And that's often quite like when we're having a baby soon kind of energy. But what I've noticed is that then he's feeling every contraction with her, and she knows that he's fully engaged because his hands are on her, holding her through that intense wave contraction. And then they're glued together until the birth happens. Often when there is a very specific time in birth, I can't make it happen, but I've seen it often where there's this shift where she needs her man. And yes, he's liked my help, but now it's different. The energy is different. She needs him to be fully present. And that is usually that transition time, or like something is shifting. It's not always the case, but that's one of my favorite moments where I'm like, oh, yes, they're going in together. The glue is getting sticky. It's so sweet. It's so awesome.
And I think it's going back to what we were saying as well, is this experience, what we're talking about now. I think if I was a partner listening to this and I'd never seen a birth before, it would still feel a little bit like a foreign language, what we're talking about. I think this is what's really cool when and please, men, like if someone talks to another man that has experienced a physiological birth, talking about what that felt like and experienced, and what the experience was like, but it is the experience that initiates them into the other side of it as well, and I'm certain that's why beforehand, even though partners are really supportive, oh yeah, yep, a doula's a great idea, or a midwife's a great idea, or whatever she needs, he's like on board because he gets like conceptually that's important for some reason. And then there's this experience and it's like, oh, and what's funny is the language we use to share it just doesn't cover it, like hip squeezing, or it just doesn't.
Whatever.
Yeah, it's not the experience. The experience is much bigger.
What I wanted to say is, statistically, like we have data on this, which is so cool, I think, that men who are present at birth, and where it's a birth that is supported and not super traumatic, but a birth where, it's a really cool and powerful and beautiful experience. Men that are present, they have a hormonal imprint after birth and in the postpartum. Those fathers are more likely to look after their children in a different way than the fathers that experienced trauma or weren't present in the right way, or didn't have a good experience. So it is really profound. Like, this is not just lovely. This is this actually paves the way for fathers, or for men, to become the fathers that they really want to be. Maybe the fathers that they didn't have, because times are different now. It's a completely different world, I would say. And so all of this is, yes, it's great for the relationship, and yes, it's great for men, but they get an opportunity to have a connection on a hormonal, neurological way that they wouldn't otherwise have. So these fathers, they know how to handle their children. They will take more calculated risk in their play with their children later on in life. So that this is more than just like, what a great idea or what a great opportunity for this relationship to bond. To me, there is something so much bigger that I'm still really trying to wrap my head around, but it is really quite interesting information that we have about the transformation that happens for the men, for the fathers. That father brain is different, and it should be, and there's so much opportunity there in terms of just a healed, fatherhood, or like showing up for your child in a different way. So, it's big.
Yes. I think I want to finish here by asking if there are men that are listening, watching. I'm really inviting a lot of feedback. I think that's all I can really say here. Is it's very clear that I'm so not an expert, and I'm so open to hearing more and learning more, and if there are men out there who want to make a space, and I think we're very happy to rock up for a hot second and get things going and leave them to it. But
Yes.
that would be my invitation.
Yes. And look, this is on YouTube, and this, you know, there are also rooms in the comments like this is, you know, this is hard work for us, right? Like this stuff is so interesting, and we live for this stuff. So, you know, yeah, I agree. Please share with us any insights or any feedback. And yes, if there's an opportunity for us to gather a group of men and get the conversation started, we'll be there.